Okay. Just as we ended the session, Kaya Canino asked me about the slide presentation, and this one exists on this iPad and on my computer at home. Nowhere else that I know of as far as a slide. But this one, this and all the other PowerPoint presentations that we used last year here at NBCNS when we did the Biblical Perspectives on the Sciences class are all available on a website that's maintained by John Sabo. Evolutionisdead.com. Evolution is dead, all one word, .com. And when you open up that website up in the upper right-hand corner, so as I've been looking at the screen, upper right-hand corner, you will see the link to, you'll see the NBCNS logo, and click on that, and it'll bring up all the different slide presentations we did last year. And of course, you won't have any of us there explaining them. But all the lectures that we did last year, as far as I know, are still available on openmbcns.edu. So you can get all that stuff on there. A lot more stuff than we're going into in these 2 nights. A lot of talk about geology and information theory, intelligent design. A term that we never used last night, I didn't use today, but this is also sort of a part of it. A term that's commonly used now, mainly in the intelligent design movement, which is not strictly a Christian body of thought. There are many non-Christians who are intelligent design proponents. But the principle of irreducible complexity. And that's illustrated here. There's a level of complexity here that just has to exist altogether. To get this level of, four levels of constraint of the information in this 5-word slide. All 5 of those words have to come together in order simultaneously. You wouldn't have that complex organization in existence if you took one of the words out, if it didn't exist. So the idea, like Pastor Mike was talking about last night, how, yes, there were the phospholipids and the whatchamajiggies, and they could possibly exist and cause, and form a membrane which could appear like a functional, or the beginnings of a functional cell membrane, but without the transport proteins or whatever you call them, and all these other structures that would also have to exist. You couldn't have a functional cell membrane. All of them have to exist together. And again, the probability that all of that would happen by dumb luck just is totally improbable.
Okay, so we have about 40 minutes. What we want to do is maybe take about, as much questions as you have for Pastor Phil, just go and ask. If you have questions about the week also, let's do it. And then when we're done, about maybe, we want to finish at 9, but I have a few ending comments after, so let's go for next 30 minutes. So if you have any questions, just go, and Pastor Pete will hand the microphone over, right? Ready?
Yes. Catch. I think I can do a better job.
Pastor Simon, for sure, you can do it better.
Watch it.
Okay, I got to ask this properly. You said you've seen good scientists and bad scientists, good Christian scientists, bad Christian scientists, good secular scientists, bad secular scientists.
Yeah.
Well, the question I want to ask is, I use it, making up a term like scientific humility or like intellectual honesty. In your experience, like if you could give some kind of a measurement, or certain examples would be good too, like scientists going to, like you said, the statistician or whoever is going to publish. In your experience, how often do people go with an agenda and are disappointed when told this is like baseless, or how much, and then how much gets through? And in your experience, like, is there like an honor system? Like, are there people that really care about the rules being followed, or is there a faulty filter? Have you seen faulty filters for garbage science?
Yes, and yes, and yes, and I'm not sure if I've got them in order beyond that. Again, I'm a wildlife biologist originally, or professionally. So that's my area. That's where I've got the most knowledge of this kind of stuff. Several years ago, there were a number of U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Department, or U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which is part of the Department of the Interior, biologists. And they were doing studies. You can, one way that you can study wildlife populations, and wildlife populations are a little different from laboratory rats and bacteria that you can culture in petri dishes and have your whole population you want to study right there in a piece of glass in front of you. Wildlife is, moves, it comes and goes, it's migratory, and it can be and it lives in the wild, So it becomes more difficult to do some types of study. And I believe these guys were in the Rocky Mountains, and they were studying lynx, which are a wild cat. And to study a population, one way that you can study a population of wild animals is you can set a bait station out in likely lynx habitat, and then put barbed wire around the bait station. And not enough barbed wire to keep the animals away from the bait, but enough barbed wire so that when the animals go to the bait, they're likely to rub against the barbed wire, and some of the hairs are going to get caught in the wire. And then you've captured some hair from that animal. When you have the hair from that animal, you can study its DNA, and you can identify how many individuals might be coming to that bait station, and you can put several bait stations out. Currently, the Maryland Department of Natural Resources is doing similar studies with bears out in western Maryland. They want to find out how far the bears are traveling and how many bears there are, and how many females, how many males in the population. All of this can be done by getting some hairs. And so fairly common type of way to study wildlife. And apparently these guys wanted, lynx are on the verge of becoming endangered species. They're they're not real common animals. And so these guys wanted lynx to exist where lynx weren't really showing up. They wanted them to be there because that would mean that this would be an area that's got lynx in it, and so they would, restrict activities in that area and so on. So they were taking lynx hairs from museum skins and bringing them out and sticking them on the barbed wire. Or either that, or at least they were bringing lynx hairs into the laboratory and saying, we found this on the barbed wire out there in the woods. That was, and I don't know if those guys were Christians or not, but, that was an example of someone intentionally slanting his data. That type of thing shows up. That type of thing occurs in the sciences. Any of the scientific journals that we have, the real scientific journals, not the things like Scientific American or, Psychology Today, certainly, any of those, but, the professional journals of the sciences. I'm a member of the Wildlife Society, and we have the Journal of Wildlife Management and the Wildlife Society Bulletin. If you are going to submit an article, a report on some research that you've done to those journals, you write it all up, you carefully put all your methodology down, you submit your article, and it goes to the editor, who immediately reads it over, might hand it right back to you and ask you to rewrite parts of it or do some particular work on it or tell you it needs more something. But then it also goes, after he's looked at it, it then goes to a panel of peers. And the scientific journals, no matter what field it is, a real scientific journal will have peer-reviewed articles. And to get published in a peer-reviewed journal means that you've not only submitted to the guidelines of that journal, but that your particular article has been reviewed by a group of other scientists who are experts in that field. And they've all reviewed your methodology, your results, your analysis, your conclusions, and they don't review your actual experiments, and they don't say, hey, I don't believe you really did this, show me, but they review the whole process to make sure that at least what you're reporting is scientifically consistent throughout the whole report. And there are articles that get rejected by peer-reviewed journals on a regular basis. Sometimes I can't hear myself. Sometimes I hear myself better. I thought I just disappeared. Hey, here. Okay. So that process exists, and sometimes it catches some real bogus stuff. And then, often when that kind of thing happens, the editors of the journal will put in, a commentary, if you will, or a warning, basically saying, Philippe Siraji submitted some stuff to us that is just so weird that we've just got to tell you, this guy can't be trusted. Yeah. Oh.
What about the other way around? Like, things that published that are just not viable?
Yeah, well, as I say, they don't actually review the actual, they don't actually, try and repeat the experiments and so on. So it's sort of a disclaimer thing that, yeah, we're saying that what's reported here is all appropriate according to our guidelines in the scientific method and so on. But, they're not saying that they've actually done the work and gotten the same results. So, but that's the idea of the peer-reviewed article. Then is that you as a scientist can read that and say, oh, okay, I don't believe it. I'm going to go do exactly what he says here and see if it's real. And then what you would do is publish your report, and actually the editors usually in the scientific journals love that kind of stuff. Gee, Dave LaFlame came back with this report that says that Philip Siraji's stuff is just ridiculous. And then you get the response back, and they get several articles, and they hash it out, hopefully, and find out what's real. That does happen. So the process, it's a certain amount of honor code. If you submit something, it's we generally believe that what you're submitting is really what you've done, and that you weren't clipping hairs off the museum skins. But sometimes that's found out to be the case. But the other side, the further point is that there are people, both Christians and non-Christians, who's, they get so caught up in the subjectively in wanting to prove their point that they can reach conclusions far beyond what their experiments really show. Dr. Miller, last night, Pastor Mike was talking about the guy who was zapping the methane and ammonia in the laboratory. And his conclusion was that life could have begun in a tide pool somewhere millions of years ago. But all he really proved was that you can make amino acids by zapping methane and ammonia with electric current. And I can't remember now where I first heard it, but if after years and years of diligent scientific work, the most brilliant men in the scientific community are finally able to create life in the laboratory, all that proves is that it takes tremendous intelligence to create life. But we knew that. We knew that already. We've been trying to tell them.
I guess a typical way of proving that something is real in science and works is looking at the molecule and starting from there, and it works in the detail and it grows. How about looking at the whole? And isn't that more the creationist way of looking at things?
It might be an easier way of looking at things, but, and it's hard to discern exactly what the question is, but
Isn't it a typical scientific empirical way of proving that something is true to look at the details of it and go to very, very detail-minded study?
Well, it depends on what you're studying and what you're, what the problem is that you're investigating. And there are sciences which deal exclusively with microscopic and submicroscopic, atomic and subatomic science. And there are sciences that deal with galactic topics and problems. But I guess the essence of it is that in a sense, you need to have a body of observation first so that you can have some basis for making a testable hypothesis, no matter what the scale in terms of dimensions of time and space may be. You still have to have, the very first step is to come up with that problem, and that you can only really have a problem which can lead you to form a hypothesis when you observe and consider whatever it is you're studying. In other words, find details, whether it's details about a galaxy or details about a neutrino, I guess. Is that?
You defined the scientific law as something which, a hypothesis which has been proved in all circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
There is this word theory. Now, is hypothesis and theory the same word? Because, sometimes I have used this with some of the, like, in the evangelism, like, for example, evolution is still called a theory of evolution, while laws of thermodynamics, they are laws.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
basically it's based on, like, maybe axioms or...
Yeah. The The significant difference between a theory and a hypothesis is that a hypothesis is stated in a way which is scientifically testable, whereas a theory, the theory of evolution, as a general broad idea which specifically is not testable. From that theory, you come up with hypotheses, and you can test those hypotheses, which then either give support to or shatter your theory. And theories do evolve, not by random mutation, but a theory will evolve because you test your hypotheses, and your answers, the results you come up with, either support the theory as stated or lead you to change your theory to accommodate the actual results you've achieved. So that's the main thing. That's the theories are much sort of larger scale, and as stated, they're not a provable hypothesis that can be submitted to. The theory of evolution says we evolved from, goo to you by way of the zoo is one fun old way of saying it. And that can't be proven because we can't replicate past conditions that are unknown. We have no idea, if there was some initial first living amoeba thing, whatever it was, we have no idea what its genome was, so we can't replicate that and submit it to the scientific method. Yeah.
Words are as good as the definition you give them. But in philosophy of science, when you study that from the analytical philosophy, they tell you that an hypothesis is an educated guess. It's like maybe like some kind of a thing, an idea you have. So it's not proven. And the theory, most of the time, would be a collection of hypotheses that have been proven to be true. But the theory does not mean that it's true. It means that so far a theory has not been disproved. So that's why people call theory of evolution the theory, because according to them it has not been disproved. But it's not yet a law, and it will never be, obviously, but it cannot be a law because it has not been proven in an undisputable way. So an hypothesis is something smaller, as Professor Phil said. It's an educated guess. And when I have my hypotheses, and I mix them up, and I put them together, I have a theory. And I think my theory stands as long as you don't disprove it. But a theory is not something that has been proven. It's something that has not been yet disproven, according to philosophy of science.
Here we have reproducible results. A hypothesis is an educated guess.
I have a question.
Oh, Dave.
Just maybe this is off subject, so it's fine if you don't want to answer. But can you talk a little bit about, can you talk a little bit about the regularity of nature? How, I don't know, too far off?
Is 2 prunes enough, or 6 too many? I'm sorry. What do you mean by regularity?
Well, just how amazing it is that there's a regularity in nature. A controlling regularity in nature that cannot be explained?
I'll tell you a little story. Maybe that'll illustrate. In my offices, I work for the Natural Resources Division of the Department of Recreation and Parks for Howard County. One of my coworkers, who as far as I know is not a Christian, manages a particular piece of property we have, and she had a project going with most of you who are North American are familiar with monarch butterflies. Monarch butterflies are beautiful orange and black butterflies, very common throughout the United States and into southern Canada. And they migrate. They're butterflies. They actually migrate. They breed and live in the summertime as far north as southern Canada. And there are two different populations. One population spends the winter around Monterey, California, on the west coast of the United States. And the other population spends the winter in mountain valleys in central Mexico. And the fascinating thing that is, well, we'll start in the mountain valley in Mexico in the wintertime. And you have these adult monarch butterflies. You have so many butterflies resting on trees in the forests in these mountain valleys in Mexico that limbs will break off these trees from the weight of accumulated butterflies. Literally millions of butterflies. And springtime comes and the days start getting longer and the butterflies start flying north. And as they fly up into Texas and across the Great Plains and into the eastern United States, they're laying eggs. And those eggs are growing into caterpillars, which then pupate and turn into moths, or butterflies, I'm sorry. Wow, we almost had evolution taking place there. Yeah, turn into adult butterflies. And they continue north. And perhaps 3 generations later, monarch butterflies have reached southern Canada again. And they lay eggs, and they turn into caterpillars that turn into pupae that turn into butterflies that begin flying south. There is no one generation of butterflies that makes this entire migratory circuit. The ones that spend the winter in the mountain valleys in Mexico are not the same ones that left that mountain valley last spring. The ones that arrive there are usually 3 generations later than the ones that left there. And I was talking with her about this, and I just found it fascinating, and I said, that I had it the other way around. I had these butterflies in Canada, and they were laying eggs as they traveled south, and then the next generation flew north again. And she said, no, it's the other way around. And she explained that to me, and I, oh, thank you. And she said, isn't that amazing? And I said, yeah, it is. She said, I don't see how anybody could look at this and understand that and think that it just happened by random chance. And I don't know if that answers your question, but it illustrates the fact that the natural processes that we observe are not fully explicable by random chance, neutrinos zapping around and bouncing into Higgs boson particles, and it just this might hit closer to the core too. We all know that basic principle of electromagnetism, that like charges repel each other and opposite charges attract. Magnetism, magnets, opposite poles and all that. And electric currents are the flow of electrons, and all has to do with like charges repelling and opposite charges attracting. And we also understand from the Bohr models of an atom that we all studied when we were in science classes in school, that the nucleus of an atom is composed of primarily neutrons and protons. And then orbiting around those neutrons and protons are the electrons. And the electrons have a negative charge and the protons have a positive charge. Well, what are all those protons doing packed together with each other when like charges repel? And what are all those electrons doing flying around out there when they should be attracted to all those protons and crashing in on the nucleus? There's something about what we understand taking place there that doesn't make sense with what we understand about what's taking place there. And so the folks who are supposed to know about these things have decided that there is what we call the strong nuclear force. And the strong nuclear force is the most powerful force in the universe. It somehow operates only on subatomic distances, and it overcomes the repellent characteristics of the like-charged protons in the nucleus. Okay, sounds good. What evidence do you have of the strong atomic force? Well, we have the fact that the protons are all hanging out together in the nucleus. So if they're all doing that, there must be some force that's holding them in there. So it must be the strong atomic force. Well, that doesn't sound like evidence. That just sounds like it's the only way you can make sense of what you've observed, but it isn't what you've actually observed. Well, yeah, that's right. So it's, well, we don't really have any evidence for the existence of it, except that if it doesn't exist, then something else that we have no evidence for the existence of is at work there, because that's how we understand things. My Bible says that he holds all things together by the word of his power. And I've got lots of evidence for the fact that his word has power. And I look all over the place and I see things that are holding together. I see my own sanity held together by the word of his power. I see the body of Christ held together by the word of his power. I also have no empirical, scientific, this is the experiment I've done and I found, but I have a consistent explanation, which is outside the realm of the scientific method, just like their explanation. And I don't mind calling God a strong atomic force. It's not his only name.
I read a part about that they don't know why water boils. They know why it boils or how it boils, but they don't know why it boils at a certain temperature, and it has for thousands of years. Like something simple as that. There's 1,000 of those apparently, but that's one I remember.
Yeah.
That just cannot figure it out why nature would pick that number for water to boil, that degree. Mm-hmm. And the only thing I can think of is Colossians 1, and by him all things consist. Like Jesus is involved.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't find it at all surprising that water is the first specific material that is mentioned in the Word of God. Yeah.
Someone decided that it was going to be.
Someone decided it should be, and so it was. Yeah. Dave Smithson had his hand up before, and then Jerry, too.
I was just wondering if some of these animals that have gone into extinction, even some of them in recent years have been extinct, whether they really don't support evolution at all. I don't know if that's an odd question, but in other words, maybe God ordained certain things to take place, woolly mammoths to freeze and not continue, and yet elephants continue, but just his God at work, really. But it's not evolution, in other words, it doesn't support evolution.
No, it doesn't support evolution at all. And yeah, God has ordained or allowed everything. What's really amazing to me is or awe-inspiring, maybe a better term, all the organisms that the evolutionists thought were extinct, that we are finding. And for instance, I have heard, I haven't read the scientific journal reports or anything yet, but I understand that they have found proteins in some of the dinosaur fossils that have been found and investigated. Proteins which couldn't possibly have survived being through the whole fossilization process in the millions and billions of years or whatever that supposedly have transpired since the dinosaur died to leave its fossil. I don't know anybody personally, but I know there are scientists who've found woolly mammoths, frozen in permafrost in Arctic tundra that have, they've dined on woolly mammoth steaks. The meat was perfectly good, or at least perfectly edible. That Jurassic Park idea about the DNA from the mosquitoes trapped in the amber thing. Well, the whole cloning part, that's where you're stretching into fiction, that they've been able, they haven't been able to do that, clone dinosaurs from the DNA that was found in, but certainly there's proteins trapped in amber that are, it's amazing that they've survived. Coelacanths is a fish that was supposed to be one of the missing links between the bony fishes and the first amphibians, and they've been, millions of years they've been extinct until some fishermen off the southwest coast of Africa caught some, and apparently had been catching them for generations. They'd always been eating coelacanths, and just that the people that believed they were extinct had never met up with the fishermen before.
If there's no question, I'd like to make a comment. All right. Near the end of the class, we went into a couple of these quotes, and I'm not going to read them, I'm just going to reference them. Quote 60, 49, 50, 51. And some of the absurdities of these presentations, like from Mr. Hume and such like that, such a willful, as we said, a willful suppression of the evidence. But it's almost like a scientific cult, a non-thinking cult. Join us. We will verbalize everything you're going to say, tell you not to think, and join our team. Mm-hmm. And I'm just kind of shocked at it that they come right out and say it. And then... And I guess, when people join their camp, they're like, yeah, I guess we're going to join the evolution club, and we'll, it's this idea just to be in the majority. Or I don't even understand how thinking people are going to join this idea. Are they just joining because they're following the non-thinking? Or I guess it's really just, as you said, like in Romans 1, there's that, I know it's true, but I can't go there. I can't believe the Bible. I can't believe evolution because we're going to get into creation. We're going to connect to the Bible. Ultimately, that's going to say the Bible is true. Now I've got a whole book to be accountable to, and I'll be damned if I'm going to go and be accountable to what the Bible says. So I'm just going to believe or suppress what I think. It's like a cult,
I'm getting rebuked by the. Wow, you. It's the end. Everybody's tired. We've been there since Monday morning, 8:30, almost nonstop. No, what you're saying is that not. I don't know. I think to me, it's. We said earlier in the class, the psychology of the unbeliever is complex. just like our psychology is complex, meaning that there is, you remember in the class I asked all of you, who did something just for the sake of pleasing someone else? All of us raise our hands, meaning that sometimes we do things just for the sake of being accepted. And I think it's true for everyone. So if we believe that there is no real objectivity without God, then we also mean that it includes that the scientist who is an unbeliever will have to do some things by suppressing the truth about God, but also suppressing the truth because he wants to to have a career maybe. And it's true not only for scientists, it's true for everyone. You know, if I want to make it in business, maybe I will have to go with the flow. Maybe I will have to go with the program. And if I say something because I have ethics, then I will never progress in my career also. So I don't think it's specific to the scientists. It's just the way the unbelievers are. You know, it's if I can move up, I will. And if I need to push and shove to do that, I will. So that has to be done on the human level, and it has to be done on every level, meaning on the scientific level, also the thinking level, also. It has to be. So yeah, I mean, we spoke a lot of that about, you know, the psychology of the unbeliever during the class, and how much, you know, the foolishness that comes in, you know, according to Romans 1, actually is because we know that God exists, we know that there is a God, we know that we're suppressing the truth, and this is what apologetics should address, not that you don't know God, but that you know God and you suppress the truth, and that's what's very efficient. So we got a couple of minutes. You want to add maybe? You have your mic on?
Do I? Yes, I do. Okay, thank you. This is a quote from Scientific American, which is, again, not a peer-reviewed scientific journal, but a magazine that presents science for the general public. And it is a pro-evolution. Okay, I need this. So Scientific American is a pro-evolution popular magazine. And this is the quote: "Thus, science welcomes the possibility of evolution resulting from forces beyond natural selection. Yet those forces must be natural. They cannot be attributed to the actions of mysterious, creative intelligences whose existence in scientific terms is unproved." They're basically saying they are limiting themselves only to the scientific method, the empirical senses, and nothing else is real. And as I said, a lot of times they'll these articles in such magazines will refer to natural selection as almost having a personality and a purpose and a design and a goal. Attributing, in other words, non-scientific attributes to to their supposedly scientific theories.
Okay. Okay, so thank you, Pastor Phil, very much for your time. It was very good. Thank you very much. So it's the end of the week, so thank you very much also for your attention. You've been very good students. I think so. We'll see about the post-course work. Just a few information just about the attendance sheet. I took the attendance sheet. Some of you were there for all of it. Some of you missed some of the class. So if you don't remember when you missed, which you should remember, you can come to me and we'll have the attendance sheets. But what you have to do for every hour of class you missed, you need to give me 1 page of notes. So if you missed a block of 4 hours, I need the four pages of notes. I don't want any pages of notes. I want the notes that you missed. That means that you have to listen to the class and video and just show me that because if you don't, then you lose points on your grade. And then there is 30% of your grade, final grade, is about the pre-course work that you've done. 20%, as I said at the beginning of the week, was participation in the class, and the 50% left will be in the post-course work that you will receive by email. And basically, it will be the reading of 3 books, the trilogy by Francis Schaeffer, and then the few of the papers I'm finishing to think about, because I needed to see how much we went to our syllabus before I give you the papers. Since we went through everything, I can give you some extra work, and I will try to do that during next week, so you have time to do some reading and get the books and everything. But it has to be done by September 30th. And for the class, I think for the course for Pastor, the research and writing class for Pastor Andrew Lunis, is it for January? Is it? I think it's for January. So, did I forget something? I don't think so. Yeah, so thank you very much. It was very fun for me to be with you guys. I think we had a great week, and you are wonderful. Thank you.